It is the Extended Play Podcast with Ian Tank.
Welcome to the Extended Play Podcast with Ian Tank. Later on, we'll have our second installment of our playlist challenge. But first, our main topic will be loyalty. And that is, what does it take for you to become loyal to a particular recording artist? How far does that loyalty go? And are there instances in which you stop being loyal to an artist? One of the ways I was looking at this notion of being loyal to an artist was, how many bad records does it take in a row before you say, I'm not listening to the next one. I'm not buying the next one. Not that you've given up on the artist, not that you stopped listening to the stuff that you liked, but you've kind of just, resigned yourself that I'm probably not going to like what's coming next, and it's not worth my time.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm pretty sure I have a much longer leash than you do. I think we know that.
I think that's true for sure.
And I know that I end up giving a lot of leash to the artists that I listen to because, for better or worse, I end up kind of forming a connection with them and sticking with them. And I kind of enjoy the dynamic of growing older with them. Obviously it's more germane for an artist that happens to be near my age.
Sure.
It's probably not a coincidence that some of the bands I'm most ardent about are not that far away from my age, 10 years or so, because there's an aspect of growing with them. You mature, their music matures. Mm-hmm. So I definitely am predisposed to sticking through it, but there are examples where it even that's just not enough. And
sure. Yeah.
It's time to move on.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is the podcast where we name names, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. And I know the one I always think about is Iron and Wine for me, because I was so passionate about the first EP and then the first two records, I think. And it did something for me. It was the first time I'd ever listened to like super kind of, especially the first EP, like lo-fi, like clearly this is recorded in a bedroom, but not like how like Billie Eilish can record in a bedroom now. And it's a fully produced album. This is just before that technology is available. So it sounds homemade. It's like you can hear the clicks of the tape recorder essentially. Wow. And I never thought I'd be into that kind of stuff, but there was something so raw about the emotion, and I connected with the lyrics, and I really, really enjoyed it. And that lasted for about 2-3 albums. And then you get to whatever it was, the third or fourth album. And to no fault of his own, this particular artist evolves and tries something a little bit different. And you're like, all right, I'm loyal enough. I really dig the first few albums. Let's go for it. Let's try something different. And in this case, it's like, let's add a full backing band, right, on more than a track or two. Okay, well, it's not what I got into this music for. There was something very particular about it being so lo-fi and so singular, such the product of one individual recording artist. It's no longer unique to me, and it loses some of its cachet.
But that's tough though, because it's got to be hard. Artists don't want to keep making the same stuff over and over again.
Totally.
So it is tough.
Yeah.
Right? And probably the hardest part of being a quote unquote successful artist is, great, you're well received for what you've done. Now what do you do?
Right.
And it's that Sophie's choice to keep doing what works or doing something new, knowing that what works is probably not nearly as interesting to you.
Right. And it does seem for them, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? Mm-hmm. They're screwed either way by the critics.
Right.
So in the case of Iron and Wine, I kept going for 2 or 3 more albums after that. And the guy who is Iron and Wine, Sam Beam, he's really prolific. He's also very verbose. There's a lot of lyrics per, like I've talked about in previous episode, how many words are in a Taylor Swift song really turned me off.
Right.
That has started happening more and more where I'm like, this is too many words. But I tried it. And then eventually I'm like, this is just not what I signed up for. And I stopped. Now, that doesn't mean I've written him off and he's dead to me now. A couple years ago, an album came out and I heard something. I'm like, this sounds more like what I got into it in the first place. And I'm in. But now I can kind of take it or leave it, pick it up here, put it down. But the loyalty part is gone. Like I'm not just I'm judging every individual record on its own merit.
Yeah, just understandable. I think the one that, and again, it's hard for me to finally give up. But for me, and it hurts me to say this, it really does, but it was Tori Amos.
Yeah.
I am, borderline super fan.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've met her in person, via charity donation. It was not her choice. It was pay my way in.
She didn't seek you out?
No. She did not. But I've been to, I'm going to guess 10 to 15 shows. I've seen her all over the world.
Yeah.
And I keep buying the albums out of a sense of, I don't know, responsibility, loyalty.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, this artist has given me so much, memories, feelings, whatever.
Right.
It's the least I can do to pop another $9.99. Right. And because again, I'm one of the dinosaurs that still buys albums.
Right.
It's my main intake of music. But and then on the live side, she used to be a dynamic improvisational, and she's a master musician.
Yeah.
A prodigy, and the energy and all the good things about it, I just feel like have gone away. And the recorded material feels uninspired and lazy. The live shows seem uninspired. Everything seems uninspired.
Wow. And
it's like, I'll give you quite a bit of runway, but you got to try.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, that's probably a 20, 25 year fandom, right? Which finally winds down.
Right. And that doesn't taint your experience of the old stuff, right?
No, okay. I just, and I've said, and maybe I'll even throw this up on our site for shits and giggles, but I always said, if you made a graph if you somehow quantify song quality and tabulate a score for each album, it would be a linear line from Little Earthquakes to Under the Pink to Choir Girl Hotel, Boys for Pay. I mean, it's linear.
Yeah.
To the point where,
it's as a drop off, you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a straight line down. It's 45-degree angle. Yeah. And it sucks because, I feel kind of cheated in a way. She doesn't owe me anything.
Yeah.
But, and even worse, she will not stop forcing her daughter on the audience.
Oh,
I get it. You've got a daughter.
Okay.
She has a mediocre voice.
Oh, really? Oh, she records.
She's on the album.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. She's at the live shows. She's on the albums.
Oh.
Her name is Tosh.
Okay.
Oh, it's the worst. Like, your kid's not talented. Sorry. I mean, moderately at best.
Right.
Right. But I think that's emblematic of exactly what the problem is. It's become almost, she's become a caricature of herself.
Okay.
Between the plastic surgery and forcing her spawn on us. It sucks.
Do you find yourself like mourning that
Kinda.
relationship you had with her?
Kind of, like we talked about earlier, there's, she's coming around on tour.
Yeah.
And she's going to be almost literally in my backyard.
Right.
And this summer, and I don't need it.
You don't need it.
I would have probably, killed a child to get front row seats maybe 15 years ago.
Yikes. Maybe her child.
Yeah, fucking Tosh has it coming. But, now it's like, $80 on a Sunday night. Like, I'll stay home.
Wow.
Yeah, it sucks. But, there's plenty of examples in the opposite direction.
I was just going to ask about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Metallica is the obvious ride or die, forever. Because I guess that's a good contrast. I feel like they never stopped trying.
Okay.
And the one thing I think, again, I don't expect everyone to like them. I know there's a million reasons why someone wouldn't, but I think the one thing that's undeniable is they, I guess, as much as any other artist, and I can name some other ones that I feel are this way also, that deserve the same respect, they don't give a fuck what you want them to do.
Okay.
And they're well aware that every album is going to have every fucking mullet-wearing, Trans Am driving, New Jersey living guy be like, oh, they haven't been the same since Master of Puppets.
Right.
Yeah, they know it's coming. Okay?
Right.
They don't give a fuck.
Right.
And I don't know, the music, it bobs and weaves from what sounds like old stuff to new stuff.
Sure.
They try stuff that sometimes gets, horribly panned, and some ways rightfully so, but okay, but you try it.
Absolutely.
And so, I at least feel like they're putting in, I may not always dig it, but I at least feel like they're still trying.
Sure. And the through line is the sound. I mean, generally, right? Yeah, they try things. Yeah, they veer one way or another, and production may be different, and tempo might be different, but there is a Metallica sound that
between the guitar tone and Hetfield's voice. It's, at least in my head, it's like starting with a massive advantage, right?
Sure, yeah.
Like it's kind of hard for them to fuck it up,
right?
And they have access to whatever producer they want,
sure,
right, and whatever tools they need,
right. And they could essentially become a tribute band to themselves. Right. And just kind of rehash the same formula. And they had, at least the limited exposure I have to stuff since, the 90s.
Yeah.
That's not the case with them.
Right. Oh, and it's, again, I promise we won't turn this into a discography review, but, their peak is the Black Album.
Okay.
Right? Commercially.
Oh, right. Sure.
And you can make a good argument. It brought heavy music to the mainstream. Right?
Sure. Yeah.
Enter Sandman is what did that.
Absolutely.
Load and Reload, they cut their hair.
Yeah.
They started wearing leather pants and being weird.
Right.
And songs like Hero of the Day sound nothing like,
right.
But again, that's how it should be.
Yeah.
When you have gajillion dollars, it's like, why would you care?
Right.
And then they take a long ass break and blah, blah, blah. Then I'll do an entire Saint Anger episode someday.
Sure.
At Lulu, that's a whole lot of stuff there. But yeah, they stay true to themselves for better or worse. When, they have an album coming out this year, and, I'm always curious when a new song drops, and they did a very good job at hiding it. No one knew, and it comes out of nowhere.
That's really cool.
But, I always go check, what is this on YouTube trending? Right.
Oh, okay.
And the first time, for Lux Eterna, it was number 3, and I looked, all the top 20 were mumble rap.
Wow.
I think I might have known 2 or 3 of the artists out of the 20.
Wow.
Again, I'm no paragon of what's hot right now. But I have a finger tangentially on the pulse. It's somewhere on the body.
Can I venture a guess where?
It's you can't see under the tape. Just leave it at that. But to be relevant and to not. That's why I have the most amount of respect for them is, and I know that I tried to blow your mind with this statistic that, the distance from Kill 'Em All to today is longer than Kill 'Em All to World War II. Right. That's how fucking long the career is. And to be anything, even just not a caricature of your former self. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
To not be, you're playing the casino circuit.
Right.
And it's like, oh, play Sandman one more time.
Right.
Right. And that's why I have so much respect and admiration for them. It's, that's a long time to stay just relevant.
Absolutely.
And like it or hate it. And you pull up YouTube videos of reactions and there's people, oh, they're dead, they suck, and oh, they're still great. It doesn't matter. It's that people are talking about it,
right? And
not in a way like, oh, well, their time has passed, or just play the hits and shut up.
Yeah, and one of the things you were explaining earlier off mic was that for Tori's fan base, there's like a sycophantic sort of relationship between the fans and Tori, where she can do no wrong, and there's no useful criticism. If you want to get in a conversation with somebody about, I'm a super fan, you're a super fan, what do we think about this new album? You're not going to get a real conversation out of that.
Right. And God knows Metallica has their equivalents. I've seen a coffee table book's worth of horrible Metallica tattoos in my lifetime of people that, think like the entire And Justice for All album cover on their back.
Wow.
They're out there.
Yeah.
But her contingent, she's playing Meadowbrook. Right.
Right.
So, to anyone who's not in the Detroit area, it's a small amphitheater.
It is.
Right. So
in the suburbs.
Right. So she's playing 1,000 to 2,000 seat, and you can maintain that with nothing but your cult following.
Yeah, sure.
Right. But that's the thing is, Metallica, some other bands like them, they're still selling out 90,000 seat stadiums.
Right.
And, no one has that amount of hardcore followers, right? So to maintain that kind of appeal, you got to be putting the effort in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Unless you're the Rolling Stones, so I don't understand when people pay to see them.
I don't either. You mentioned earlier that part of your loyalty to an artist is that you feel like it helps that you are around the same age and you grow with them. Mm-hmm. And I think this calls back to our conversation about, in a different episode, about the importance of lyrics, right? Mm-hmm. So how does that work with Tori? Not to beat a dead horse, but was there a time when...
Don't worry, she has been for 15 years. I'm sure, but it's a unicorn, not a horse.
Of course,
and it's being written by elves and fairies.
Of course, it is that she speaks to on a daily basis
when she's not busy talking to the trees.
So that's coincided as well. It's not only the performance, it's not only sort of the like a perceived amount of passion behind the music. It's also like sort of lyrically, you can't identify with what she's going through anymore, or is that not really?
I guess with her, I never did.
Okay.
Right. I mean,
it was something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think with her, it was the virtuosity.
Gotcha.
And,
okay.
Which honestly, I mean, stumbling upon it, that's probably my biggest beef with it.
Yeah.
Earlier albums were, you know, as instrumentals would have been interesting.
Yeah.
Right. Her piano playing, the arrangement, everything after the first 5 or 6 albums, I feel like is the world's laziest piano playing with some breathy poetry over it.
Okay.
And, you know, no thanks.
Gosh, I never thought about it that way. And I also don't, this is not an insult. I don't think of you as being someone who virtuosity is like a thing, like that you are really looking forward to someone pushing the envelope that way.
I've really had a weird thing for piano this whole time.
Okay.
Remember? Didn't we take piano class together at Michigan State?
No.
I think you were sitting next to me.
No, I was not.
I might have done a lot of drugs. Are you positive?
I, for sure, was a borderline alcoholic in college, but I am.
No, not about that. That I know.
Yeah.
But that you didn't take that class?
No, I did not.
Huh. Wow. That's a fucking, what do they call that? Mandela effect moment right there?
Yeah.
Like I have a whole history.
Right.
Huh. Anyway.
Okay.
No, I've always had a thing for piano.
Okay.
In a weird way.
Okay.
Like it's, you know, the Ben Folds and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I've always, you know,
that's
gravitated
true.
towards it. But no, just the energy, because it is an amazing instrument, right? And
Absolutely.
The energy and the power. I mean, you listen to Precious Things. I mean, she's pounding the shit out of those keys. And
Yeah.
the piano is a force. It's the central part. That's the thing. When the piano was the central part of the music.
Okay.
Okay, but when you know, she maybe got too far up her own ass and it was about, people want to hear me, not the piano. It's like, well, no.
They actually
don't. That was never it.
Not for you anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, you know, I guess her voice was fit to be the supporting player, not the main player.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. And once that shift happened,
Right. For as many experiences that I have with artists, to put a positive spin on it, for as many experiences I have with artists who I was loyal to and then kind of dropped that loyalty because they shifted in ways that I just wasn't cool with, I do have a decent amount of experience with bands who do the opposite, who take a subtle or pretty severe left turn, and I'm like, oh, okay. And it takes you a while. You're like, let's do this. And that's a really cool experience when it works. So again, this is that damned if you do, damned if you don't situation.
Right. I mean, which do you think for you is the best, who had the best transition in your opinion?
I think the most straightforward one was is Radiohead for me. Right.
Did they do it after every album though?
No.
Okay.
Kid A, everything changes there. And it's a drastic change. But it worked for whatever reason, whatever quality was in the songs beforehand. And it can't be the lyrics because Kid A, notoriously, I mean, believe it or not, I've read multiple books on Kid A, and apparently the lyrics are nonsense. He was like doing some sort of like essentially off the top of his head, chant type stuff, right? Like, I think the first lyric on Kid A is "Yesterday I woke up sucking a lemon," and it means nothing. I mean, there's no. Whereas on the previous albums, they were either, you know, love songs or there was political commentary and things like that. The shift is not only musically, not only do you go from loud guitars and pretty standard rock format, you know, indie alternative rock format, to bleeps and bloops and right everything recorded on, or it seems like everything's recorded with a computer. But the lyrics change drastically too. But for whatever reason, it worked. And it's probably, you know, you mentioned Tori's voice and that being sort of like as her voice being a secondary to sort of the music. I wonder, the through line is Tom York's voice. Mm-hmm. It's very distinct. And if you like it, you like it. And if you don't, I get it. Mm-hmm. I totally get it, right? It's very distinct. But that's the major through line. And it's been super rewarding. And has each album since then changed a lot? No, not necessarily, but just enough.
So has this deft transition and movement, has it earned loyalty from you?
It absolutely has.
So you see yourself, I know you don't really buy albums like I do necessarily, but metaphorically, would you keep buying the albums?
Actually, so as someone who's just kind of got into vinyl, I buy the Radiohead.
Oh, that's true.
Vinyl.
Yeah.
And I pre-order it.
Mm-hmm.
And I get the deluxe one with the art book and everything. I should also mention that too. that is actually shifted, right? You go from what some would say, you know, especially when you talk about Pablo Honey, their first album, pretty standard alternative rock. That's the album with Creep on it, right? And then it gets a little more experimental, a little more cutting edge. And, but right about the time that the shift happens, OK Computer is a pretty big shift as well. One thing that has endeared me, one thing that has secured loyalty from me is how transparent Tom York is, how available he is, how he'll go on, you know, a music podcast, but he'll also go on Colbert. And he'll be 100% himself, and he'll talk about weird shit like dreams and talk about his art. And I've watched a number of videos where he's like, I'm just fascinated by like when they made Kid A, they were recording in a loft in a building, and on the floor below, there was an artist, his friend, who was creating the artwork for the album simultaneously. Concurrently, right? And I find that fucking fascinating, right? I just think and people say, oh, it's so pretentious. And you can have that attitude about Radiohead as well, right? They're trying too hard. They're too pretentious. But you get into it, there's the authenticity factor there. I believe that he believes that art is important. And I believe that he believes that art is essential to your experience of the music.
Now, it's the first I've heard of this, but
okay.
Was he painting based on overhearing the music upstairs?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
With feedback from, you know, he would ask questions of Tom York. He'd ask him questions about the lyrics, right? And like I said, Tom York would come down, give input and say, I like where you're going here. But yeah, it was a mutual thing, which,
but why not? Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably a very good episode for the future, but there is some link between the imagery and the music.
Absolutely.
Right. Like, you know, like Dark Side of the Moon, like you can't hear that album title without picturing the cover.
No, you're right.
So there's something to it. And again, why not? Again, effort.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Give people something. I guess my take on why it probably worked is it's kind of like, and I'm going to use women as an example because I happen to be attracted to women, but if you're beautiful enough, it doesn't even matter what you're wearing. You know?
Okay.
Like these perfectly gorgeous people, like they drive you crazy because they wake up.
Right.
And they just look great.
They don't have to try it all.
No, it's like there's no makeup. It doesn't matter what you're wearing.
Yeah.
I feel like with some musicians, it's the same thing. If it's there, it's there.
Sure.
And whichever way you choose to point it, it's still going to sound good because it's there.
Right. So you have a lot of extra respect when they go above and beyond.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Like show that you care. Try something new. Try something different.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I guess the older I get, I find myself applying that across all interactions I have with people. Just try.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's professionally, personally, as a friend.
Yeah.
And, you know, with these artists, or with these musicians artistically.
Yeah. Move it forward.
Yeah. Do something.
Yeah. No, I totally get it.
So one, I guess I don't want to say exception, but the one slightly different, kind of the anomaly for me with the loyalty stuff is the Foo Fighters.
Okay.
I don't know how much and when we say they, we know it's 90% Dave Grohl, right? I don't know how much he's trying or they're trying effort. I do think the transparency thing, like you mentioned, is a huge part of it for me. I believe he is who he is.
Okay.
And that, I guess I gravitate towards music made by people that I feel like they're being genuine.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, they've earned this loyalty for me just for being just a rock band.
Okay.
And you know, maybe there's a sense of nostalgia there for me. Like it's maybe the last stadium band we're going to have. But, you know, I've always said, you know, my metaphor for Foo Fighters is like they're a cheeseburger. You know, maybe not you personally, but, you know, for most meat eaters, it's, you know, you'll never say no to a cheeseburger. It's fine.
Sure.
But you're also never going to say, let's go out for, like, I just got a promotion. Let's go out for cheeseburgers.
Right.
It's never that. But I guess I have so much respect that they've just embraced that's what they are. It's like, we're just going to be really good cheeseburgers.
Okay.
And I like that.
Okay.
And they are really good cheeseburgers. And, you know, they are not Radiohead.
And they're not trying to be.
Exactly. They never will be. They're not trying to be. And I think there's something respectable in that. And, you know, I really took a liking to that. It's like, yeah, they do what they do. People will say it's not good enough or not artistic enough and whatever. They do it.
So how do you resolve that experience with the way you experience Tori in that? Do you feel like it's possible that you could be blind blinded by your devotion to them that you're no longer able to be critical. This is not an accusation.
Yeah.
I'm just curious because I was thinking of those Tory fans who are like, Tory can do no wrong now.
Right. Well, and I guess the small caveat there is my affection for their studio material has gone down.
Okay.
I do think it's been hit or miss. Sonic Highway sucked.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. But Medicine at Midnight was really good. So I think they're hit or miss.
Okay.
But yeah, it's weird. It's weird. Like my thing for them is almost more based on the live, the non-studio stuff, oddly enough, with the exception of there's a few nostalgic bits from their catalog that are always sticking with me.
And live, what's their balance of new stuff to old stuff?
Pretty good. I think that again, them and Metallica both, I think they do a very good job of, you go see a live show and 20-30% of the set is new stuff.
Okay.
Which I think is perfect balance. Because even if you want to hear new stuff, you want to hear
sure. I think that's the right line, and that's respectful of the audience as well.
Yeah.
Right. To know that they want you to play the hits.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's still a performance that people paid to see. And
Do you see yourself anytime in the future? Like, could they ever do something where you're like, I've just had enough of the Foo Fighters. It's another cheeseburger, and I've lost my taste for cheeseburgers.
Yes, I could see that happening.
Okay.
I can. I mean, it's worked so far, but yeah, I could see just running out of interest in that eventually.
I was thinking specifically about my own experience with Jimmy Eat World. It's a band I really like, and they're particular albums that I really enjoy. I still haven't seen them live, and they're supposed to be amazing live, and I've got to do it. But they keep making the same record pretty much, and it's not bad. Mm-hmm. But I don't, in the grand scheme, when you think about how much time you have to devote to listening to music, if it's another album that's going to sound mostly like the last one, I don't know that I have much time for it anymore.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm less passionate about, they got a new album coming out. I'm surprised. I'll do a search. I'll want to listen to an old album and I'll see that there's been 2 albums since I last was paying attention. And then I'll listen to a track or two. But
who would you say though is, if you had to pick one ride or die artist?
Wow.
Like from here on out, put it this way, pick an artist that everything they release, you have to listen to 100 times for the rest of your life.
Wow.
Yeah. All right. 50.
I don't know that that's possible for me. I think I just consume music in a different way.
Okay. 10 times.
Okay.
10 times of every album that gets released.
Yeah. It's probably Radiohead.
Okay.
It's probably Radiohead. I was thinking, no, it's probably Radiohead. So here's the interesting thing about that, and I think it's worth talking about, is that, so Tom York has done a bunch of solo work, and he's been in he's now in his second band outside of Radiohead. I don't listen to it. I don't even play it. I don't know what The Smile sounds like, that the group he's in with, Johnny Greenwood from his band and then somebody else. I looked at the year-end 2022 best albums of the year, and it's showing up there. They're like, this is a Tom York side project that's really good. This actually, if Radiohead never make another album and he does this for forever, that's fine. I haven't even listened to it, which is weird. And I think it's akin to my experience with, like, when I read a book and I love it and they make a movie out of it years later and I don't go see the movie because they're gonna fuck it up for me.
Okay.
And it's not even in a bad way. It's just going to be a different version. And right. I have a thing in my head, and I don't want that to be ruined. And I think that's probably not all that common, because there's been plenty of, like, this is the golden age, especially for the stuff that I read. Like, I'm super into comic books, superhero and otherwise, super into fantasy and sci-fi. And this is a golden age for that kind of stuff, going from book to film. Right. And I don't go see the movies, and I don't watch the series. I've got a copy of The Magician's Trilogy by Lev Grossman sitting here on my desk. I've reread it, a dozen times. Well, maybe half dozen times. And there was a series on Sci-Fi, and it was supposed to be pretty good. I can't even watch it. If a commercial comes on, I'm like, nope, I don't want to think that Quentin looks, I don't want to know what he looks like, because he's described this way in the book. And if it's different at all, I can't handle it.
I can see that. I mean, it's weird. I don't know why that happens, but I'm the same way, right?
Really?
There's some things that yeah, you like it the way it is, and
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know why that is. Probably a human tendency, change, and
Yeah.
whatever else.
For sure. But it's kind of a bummer too, though, right? Not a bummer, but like I recognize that I'm probably missing out on something.
But I think that's just life in general, right? We're always going to be. Now that we've weighed in on artists that we are loyal to and will be, and then there were others that we were and have since sort of gone away.
Sure.
I guess the next thing to explore might be, what does it take to get you on that train and off that train, so to speak?
Yeah.
So, how many bad albums or bad efforts does it take from an artist before you say, okay, you know what, like, you're out of the loyalty club?
Yeah. And just off the top of my head, I think it's probably once the number of bad albums is equal to the number of good ones, that's the breaking point.
So it's kind of a bank, and then they go +1 for every good album.
Exactly right.
When the balance goes negative, you're out.
That's right.
Okay.
I think that's accurate. I'm just thinking back to the bands I'm talking about. And yeah, like I said, I might come back to them, but yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if I do the same thing subconsciously. For some reason, 3 is in my head.
Mm-hmm. Same here.
There's always some leash there. The Decemberists, who I like a lot, they're probably my top 10.
Wow.
All time. And they had an album called I'll Be Your Girl.
Yeah.
Not that long ago, a few years ago.
Yeah.
It is absolutely, positively nothing like anything they've done. It was an electronic album.
Right.
Right. Whereas they were some weird anachronistic,
Yes.
like, what year is this that they're recording?
Right.
Like there's modern references, and they're talking about the Revolutionary War, and there's muskets involved.
Palanquins.
Right. But completely different direction. But I'm like, okay, and I happen to like it, or at least most of the songs. But even if I didn't, I'd be like, no, hey, they earned that one.
Oh, cool.
Right. It's like, you earned one, and I'll even give you another one.
Okay.
If you went 3 down the bad path, like, all right, maybe it's time to wrap this up.
Absolutely. Yeah. And how many would you say it takes you to get on board? Like, I imagine that there's some it's pretty much right away, right? Like, you're so blown away by the album that you discover.
Yeah. I'm kind of excitable like that.
Are you?
Yeah. I think I don't know. Excitable is one thing, but to build that kind of loyalty that I stick with it, years and years and decades and decades sometimes. Yeah, it's probably 2 or 3.
Okay.
We've talked about Jason Isbell. And another thing too is, I think because I am much less on top of new stuff as it comes out compared to you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
When it comes out, you generally are going to know it. I'd say 90% of the stuff I get into is because you told me about it.
Oh, wow.
So most of the time when I'm exposed to something, there's a catalog there already.
Right. And that's helpful.
Right.
For
so
sure.
I think that's the other reason why I end up forming these, attachments.
Okay.
It's a creepy word, but is because if I like it, there's immediately more to consume.
Which is amazing.
Yeah. Isbell was one of them, right?
Yeah.
And where it crosses over drive-by truckers.
Yeah. Run the Jewels.
Yes.
Right. They already had a couple albums.
Well, I think.
Well, at least LP and Killer Mike have solo stuff. And
exactly.
Yeah.
And I've gone backwards on LP now, all the way back to 2000. So,
right.
Yeah. No, but, I think it doesn't take much, but I think once there's 2 or 3 good ones, I want it to work, right? It's like a relationship. Like, oh, come on, I'll give you one more chance.
I don't want to look to your past and find out that you were a Nazi or something.
Exactly.
Let's hope it's going to be good. It
Right.
probably,
Right. No, but I think that for me, it's probably one or, maybe 2 or 3 in and 2 or 3 out.
Okay. I think that's fair. I think it's probably along the same lines for me.
Yeah.
It's also, I go in such waves with my listening where I'm listening to styles or genres at a specific time that I'll miss it and then have to go back to it. So it's not that because I didn't buy the let's say I'm loyal to an artist, they put out an album and I'm just not listening to that style of music for that 6 months or something. I may miss it. I may miss it entirely and not listen to it. I'll go back to it. So the loyalty is, it's not linear that way. I also would hazard a guess to say that I find new bands it's their first album more frequently than you do. And then
absolutely.
And then there's nowhere to go. You have the one album and
Right.
you've got to just wait for the next one and hope it's as good or better or gives you that same feeling.
Right.
I view discovering an artist down the line who's got a few albums under their belt. What a gift. Like, how cool to be able to go back in their catalog and see the growth,
Right.
Read up on them and see how this album that you fell in love with in some people's opinion, not even their best. And then you find their best. That's such a cool thing to dig in the back catalog. I love it.
No, it's true. It's like when I'm always jealous of, like I finally got around to watching Breaking Bad this year. When I find out people that haven't seen it yet, I'm like, oh God, I wish I could go back and do it all over
Absolutely.
again.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And maybe it's intentional. Maybe subconsciously it's the reason why I don't seek it out that much. Maybe I do love it, that whenever I finally stumble across something, there's a whole meal there, not just one dish.
Yeah. You don't want it to end.
Yeah.
I can understand that. Absolutely.
Yeah. So conversely, I guess, who's on the hot seat for you? Like, who is on their last chance?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'll have to think about it I'll give you one that's not even on the hot seat. Can I go with one that's gone?
Sure. Or recently departed.
Recently departed? Morrissey.
Really? Wow.
Because he's such a scumbag.
Yeah.
That is a huge part of it. Also, the music isn't what it was.
Yeah.
He does. Listen, if you like Morrissey, you like the lyrics, right? And you like his voice. His voice is obviously very distinct, not unlike Tom York in that it's very distinct. And since he's such a scumbag now, the sincerity of his music, the topic of his lyrics, the subject matter, I'm not interested in. I'll kind of take with a grain of salt, but you kind of like borderline racist, and I'm not interested in that stuff, so I don't want to get into it anymore. It was, to be fair, it was always diminishing returns with Morrissey, right? The Smiths occupied this time in my listening history where it's like a perfect bubble, and they break up, and he does 2 albums, I think, that are worthwhile, maybe 3. And after that, it is straight, like you said with Tori, it's like a 45-degree angle of down to just garbage. Like,
so in a way, maybe he's your Tori Amos.
He is, yeah. And it's super disappointing, right? Like I mentioned in a previous podcast, I named my kid Morrissey, and not just because I'm like some super fan and I've seen him 1,000 times, because one of the things I really loved about Morrissey was when I first saw the video for Stop Me If You Think You've Heard This One Before by the Smiths. In the video, the band isn't even in the video a whole lot. There's no lip syncing. They're not actually singing to the song. And it's a lot of just a bunch of pale white kids riding their bicycles around Manchester.
But not even the band.
The band does ride their bikes at some point, but I think
there are other pale white people.
That's right. Yeah, strange. And I remember seeing it in the late 80s and it blowing me away in terms of in 1980, let's see, I probably saw it in 87, 88. I'm 11, 12 years old. My notion of masculinity is the notion of masculinity is very important at that time because you're going through puberty and you're figuring out like, what is this manhood thing? What is your role you're going from boy to man. And there's a lot of, especially in the late 80s, machismo is a big thing. And there's a lot of like, you got to be into sports and you got to be this kind of guy. There's guys and girls and they're different. And I remember seeing that video and being super confused, not about my sexuality, but about what it means to be a man and what it means to be a rock and roll artist. And when you're not standing on top of a speaker, thrusting out your junk in front of the audience, and you're like, quite literally, there's the famous Top of the Pops performance where Morrissey's got a bouquet of flowers. I think it's actually in a video too. And as he's singing and just like very effeminate, swinging around this bouquet of flowers as he sings, it was like the total opposite of anything I had experienced in music performance. And it's very impactful. So this is all a long way of saying part of the reason why Morrissey is named Morrissey is that it represents this time in my life. And it represents not only that, but someone who at that time was 100% confident in his own skin. Mm-hmm. And if there's nothing else that I hope for my daughter is that she's the type of kid that no matter what she's got going on in her life, that she has confidence and she loves who she is. And she's not afraid of people. She's not afraid of being the weird one. Mm-hmm. And that is something that I've struggled with my whole life. And finally kind of coming to grips with it, I say the last 5 years, maybe. So to see him now be what he is really fucking bums me out.
No. Yeah. Cause it was at such a high point.
It was.
In terms of his importance, even non-musically.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now to be like he is, to not, and for his confidence to be unearned now, for him to say like, well, fuck you, I'm not going to perform at this show unless like he's done things like, unless you serve all vegan food, I'm not performing at your show.
Right.
Well, and this is coming from a vegetarian. Give me a fucking break.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
your name is Morrissey. You have that has a lot of cachet in a certain world.
Right.
But for the most part, no one gives a shit.
Right.
And they're going to drop you. That venue's going to drop you tomorrow. No problem. And they're not going to see a big hit on it. Right. Because you don't draw the fans you used to. So the confidence now seems unearned. And that really bothers me. So he's done. Morrissey's pretty much dead to me. I haven't listened to the last 2 or 3 albums. Even though I've got a poster of him sitting in this room right now that we're recording in. I've got my kid, right? I've gone back and bought the vinyl. That's it. I'm done.
Now, would you say that the more you ignore him, the closer he gets?
The further he gets.
God damn it. I thought it was...
You're right.
Oh, okay.
But the actual experience is the opposite.
All right.
The
I
more-
was sitting on that for 5 minutes.
What about you? So is there anybody besides Tori that's dead to you?
No, I'm trying to think who...
Or who's on a short leash?
Yeah. I mean, I guess Anthrax might be.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know why they're still around. It's weird. It's like...
They shouldn't exist.
No, well, I mean, no, they should. I don't mean to
Okay.
wish them out of existence.
No,
Poor guys. I guess they've been a unique thing for me because they keep straddling this line of nostalgia act versus still relevant.
Oh, okay.
They keep going getting Joey Belladonna, which is just, he looked old and out of place in the 80s.
Okay.
And it's just, yeah.
For people who aren't familiar with Anthrax, talk about the lead singer thing a little
Yeah, I mean, so when they were in their arguable heyday in the 80s, they had this singer, Joey Belladonna. And if anyone out there listening knows any Anthrax songs, that's probably with him from the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the mid-90s, he got kicked out of the band, and they brought in John Bush, who gave them a more modern sound. At the time, very much the new metal-y kind of, but he has one of the best fucking voices in rock, still does.
Nice.
And I really liked that material. And they were growing as a band and growing musically. They weren't playing their 80s, Ronnie James Dio. Like,
Yeah.
right. And then Bush, they kind of kicked him out and brought Joey back for like a cheesy cash grab reunion tour.
Oh, boy.
And, it's like, and ironically, surprisingly, they have put out some good albums with Joey since then because they forced him to basically be a John Bush light. Where it's like, no, you can't go do what you used to do. Basically, the music has to sound modern and you need to fit in it.
And does he play the songs that he wasn't originally on?
And that's fucking weak sauce too. Not that anyone gives a shit.
How many albums worth of material is that you're missing out on?
A lot.
Really?
4 or 5.
Oh my God.
So when you see them live, they don't play, they just started playing only on the last tour. So for the last, 5-10 years, you don't hear only when you go to see Anthrax live.
Which is a super good song with the second vocalist.
Yeah, arguably their best song.
Wow.
Right. And that's super weak because when John Bush was the vocalist, he sang all the old songs.
Oh, he did?
Yes.
Jeez.
So, yeah, I mean...
Is it because he just doesn't have the range?
He doesn't have the depth.
Yeah.
Right? And he's just not as good as a singer. So,
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, that's my own weird little world. But yeah, I think they're always hanging on by a thread. Like, they're always one, like, this sounds a little too 80s-ish, like, you're up.
Okay.
But yeah, they managed to sort of claw their way around.
But what a good parallel with Metallica, right? With bands of the same era with the similar style of music.
Yeah.
And how one has gone one way and one has kind of gone the other.
Yeah, one unquestionably kept growing and going forward, and the other seems like they've been going sideways for 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, one was always better to begin with, right? But,
Sure.
But even from their relative starting points, I mean, they've been treading water going sideways for a long time.
Okay.